What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. So, after U.S. officials and Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, and leader of the Republicans met with the Taiwan president, satellite images shows that Chinese warships surrounded Taiwan, and there's now a standoff around Taiwan here with based on these satellite images here and multiple images released here. This image released by the Taiwan Defense Ministry a few days ago here, monitoring Chinese war defense ships as tensions are really high here based on what the US and Taiwan have just for meeting with each other. You can see here another image, a layer of Taiwan's contiguous zone to the map in order to gain a better understanding of the situation on the waters surrounding Taiwan on April 10th. There are at least 5 encounters between vessels from both sides on the borders of the contiguous zone. So this is starting to get pretty serious here. You can see here, U.S. House Representative McCall says that China could influence and take over Taiwan in the next election without even a shot fired. Here's what he has to say. Take a listen.
And joining me now from the island of Taiwan is Congressman Mike McCall. Congressman, let me start with what's happening in the moment right before you're leaving the island. The official response of the Chinese Communist Party to both President Tsai's visit to the United States, meeting with Speaker McCarthy, your delegation's visit to the island, your own meeting with President Tsai. In terms of retaliation, something was expected. How would you describe this? Elevated, more aggressive than ever, or predictable?
Well, I think predictable, but the numbers are very high now. We have a large number of sorties. Those are Chinese aircraft, fighter jets in the air right now as I speak from the island. We have 8 ships, 7 battleships, and 1 aircraft carrier, a very large aircraft carrier. And this is in response to President Tsai's trip to the United States, but also our delegation's visit to Taiwan and with President Tsai. This is an intimidation tactic that they're known for. The size of this one is quite large, one of the largest ones we've seen. But it's not going to intimidate us.
Right.
We have every right to be here to meet with President Tsai, and it actually strengthens our resolve.
The Taiwanese themselves seem to be downplaying this. Look, you've got a firsthand look. How would you assess their defensive capabilities right now?
They're not where they need to be. If we're going to have deterrence for peace, we need to get these weapons into Taiwan. I sign off on all foreign military weapon sales, 22 weapon systems over 3 years ago, Chuck, that have yet to get into Taiwan onto the island. That will provide deterrence to Chairman Xi to think twice about an invasion. And secondly is the combat training that is occurring on the island. We need to ramp that up to a larger scale so they can provide that projection of strength and deterrence. They're not where they need to be right now.
We're having a munitions issue in Ukraine right now. The West is, and I know that that's been an issue. And I know Taiwan's got its needs of some weapon systems that we've promised. What is the best way for us to speed up our ability to make munitions? I mean, is there anything that can be done to speed things up, or is this just what happens when you're fighting a hot war in one part of the world?
Well, in Ukraine, we're putting old systems in, like Eastern NATO putting Russian in. We're using our old stockpiles in Ukraine. Taiwan, these are brand new weapon systems. And so we have a defense industrial base issue, Chuck, that quite honestly needs to be fixed. But I want to talk to the Secretary of State, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, about trying to prioritize weapons that we have sold to other countries to put them in Taiwan where the threat exists. Also, third-party sales from our allies that may have these weapons to allow them to be able to put the weapons in. What they really need right now, Chuck, are sea mines, harpoons, which are anti-ship, anything maritime, submarines, small sea drones, and F-16s. And we're working very hard to get them in right now because, time is really of the essence.
You have a sense of what the Taiwanese people want. And I say that in that we know sort of what China did before it took over Hong Kong, there was always a sense that, a lot of people in Taiwan wanted some sort of relationship with mainland China that was negotiated, that was sort of respectful. Is that what they still want, or do they think some sort of military confrontation is now going to be inevitable?
Well, they don't want a military confrontation. We certainly don't want that. I think after Hong Kong, it was a wake-up call for the people of Taiwan. President Tsai, we spoke with her today. That obviously helped her in her re-election. But I also think Putin's invasion into Ukraine was an eye-opener, right? It woke up the Taiwanese people that now you're seeing what we haven't seen since World War II, and that is dictators invading sovereign territory and getting away with it. So Putin in Ukraine, wake-up call here. Chairman Xi in his addresses to his Congress about wanting reunification of Taiwan to China, I think they're very nervous. Now, there's a political debate here. The two different parties, one party wants to talk to China. President Tsai's party does not want to be a part of China. And I think the next elections in next January are going to be extremely important because I do believe with the former President Mao in China right now, China's going to try to influence this next election and take over the island without a shot fired.
Make the basic case for why Americans not only should care about what happens in Taiwan, but should be willing to spill American blood and treasure to defend Taiwan.
Nobody wants that. I think the deterrence is key here. We traveled to Japan, South Korea. We are in Guam. We are meeting with our allies, our partners here, if you will. They don't have a NATO in the Pacific, but they do have partners. We want to make sure that they are ready and supportive of the United States and Taiwan. The case for Taiwan, that's a very good question. About 50% of international trade goes through the international straits, but I think more importantly, Chuck, is that the TSMC manufactures 90% of the advanced global supply of advanced semiconductor chips. If China invades and either owns or breaks this, we're in a world of hurt, globally.
Congressman, it almost sounds like the case that would be made in the 60s, 70s, and 80s of why America was spending so much money and military resources in the Middle East. Oil was so important for the economy. Is this sort of the 21st century version of that?
I personally, I think it's about democracy and freedom. And we need to stand up for that like we're doing in Ukraine. And if we don't do that, the other island nations are going to be threatened by Chairman Xi, who wants to restore imperial China. The way I look at it, my father's generation, World War II, you now have these two dictators, largest invasion in Europe, and now the biggest threat to the Pacific that we've seen since World War II. We have to stand up for these people and for our principles as well. But we don't want American troops there, and that's why the deterrence, I think, right now, Chairman Xi has to understand that it's going to cost him more to invade than not to, both militarily and economically, and his global standing on the world stage.
Very interesting. So, we had seen a little bit of pushback from Kevin McCarthy and some Republicans, not nearly all Republicans, about the money going over to Ukraine. Remember, a lot of the money is really in just supplies like tanks and anti-aircraft and munitions. Really, it just goes into that stuff. And now they're kind of seeing the writing on the wall with also China and North Korea and these worldly threats that really pertains to the U.S. as well. I mean, they're literally threatening the U.S. also. And you heard them, that this what happens in Ukraine sends a message to these other countries like China, like North Korea, Like, remember that the U.S. literally just got attacked here a few days ago with that drone bombing in Syria from Iranian drones, and we had to counterstrike there. So this really just kind of sends a message of what the United States is willing and not willing to put up with, and what kind of dictators the United States is and willing and is not willing to put up with. So this, you got to kind of think about this here. What is the United States not willing to put up with? And is the United States ultimately going to let Putin win this war or not win this war? And is it a matter of dollars or a matter of who's going to win or not? And this is kind of you think back to World War II here with Hitler, and if it was a matter of money or Hitler winning, which would have been more important there? I mean, think about that. I mean, think about if Hitler would have won World War II, if it was really just a matter of money. Imagine if all those countries would have been taken over by Hitler at the end of the day. Think about how different the world would be today, and think about what Hitler did there. And you could kind of see some of the similarities with Putin, how he took over Crimea. He wants to take over Moldova. He wants to take over Belarus. He wants to take over Ukraine. I mean, we're talking tens of millions of people in Ukraine alone. And, you know, a lot of the similarities. I mean, they're literally taking thousands of children out of Ukraine alone. They're literally stealing their art. We're seeing all sorts of these similarities here. And remember, the United States is not the only country helping in Ukraine. We have literally dozens of other countries in Europe doing the same. And China's watching very, very closely to see, are they going to be able to invade Taiwan next? And remember, China, massive, massive country, about 1.4 billion people. And President Biden, for better or for worse, is sticking by that Taiwan Relations Act that was passed decades ago. That, and Biden has said that we would send US troops there if Taiwan was invaded. Now, I don't know. I personally wouldn't have said that, because the Taiwan Relations Act doesn't really say that. It says that we would provide them with munitions, but this is what Biden has said publicly. And you guys can let me know your thoughts on this, but this is why we're watching this very closely. I'll keep you up to date here on everything going on here in our country on a daily basis. I'll let you hear it directly from whoever's talking about it here on a daily basis. So if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, click the bell icon so you don't miss out on new videos. And thanks for liking and sharing these videos. Here's some videos you should watch next. Here's actually what Kevin McCarthy just said that could be problematic for our country in a couple different ways. Or here's why the US is extremely nervous over what North Korea just did. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.